Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. Over the past few weeks, we've been exploring virtues and vices, the diseases that harm our character, and the cures to those diseases. In this episode, let's explore pride and humility. We live in a time when Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter encourages us to pay extra attention to our image and our accomplishments. The number of likes and retweets we get feed our urge to show off and allow the seeds of pride to grow in our hearts. How does this impact our relationship with God and with those around us? How can we practice being humble in our lives? Joining me is Dr. Shabir Ali to discuss this. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Pleasure to be on.
Can you define pride and humility for us?
They're obviously contrasting terms. Pride would be the feeling of superiority, and humility quite the opposite. Not necessarily the feeling of inferiority, but the attitude of presenting oneself in contrast to others, in a position of esteeming others and not esteeming oneself beyond a reasonable measure.
How does the Quran describe pride and arrogance?
The Quran speaks a lot about pride and shows us that in fact the first crime, if you call it that, in human history, is the one exhibited by Satan when God created Adam and said to the angels, bow down to Adam. They all bowed down except for Iblis, according to the Quran. This is Satan. And when he was asked, why did you not bow down? He said, you created me from fire and created him from clay. His point being that fire is superior to clay. So his point then is, why should I bow down to that which is inferior? He considered himself greater than Adam, and for this reason he disobeyed God's command.
And do we have any sayings from the time of the Prophet speaking specifically about arrogance and pride?
Yes, the Prophet, peace be upon him, has very often encouraged his companions and Muslims in general to practice humility and stay away from pride. According to one statement, God himself says that the pride and pride is like my garment. It's that which belongs to God. So nobody else dares to wear that mantle and present himself or herself as deserving of utmost respect that belongs to God alone. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, is noted to have said that if one has an ounce of pride in his heart, that person will not, or arrogance, will not enter paradise.
Now, I've heard that saying a lot of times as well, even when I was growing up. But how does one know that they have pride in their heart? Because no one's going to willingly come up and say, guess what, I'm better than you.
Yeah. Well, a word of caution about such reports. Like when we hear a report like this from the Prophet, peace be upon him, we should recognize that there's a difference between a legal statement and an oratory statement. Oratory means a kind of a preaching statement, preaching for the sake of encouragement, and in such statements there will be exaggeration, hyperbole, to get people to understand the point. It's sometimes sensationalized, if you like. But when one is stating a legal principle, then it's usually couched in very precise terminology with nuances and so on. So this is not meant to be a legal statement so that we can start measuring the pride in people's heart and say this one doesn't deserve to go to paradise. This is all in the domain of God, and God knows our weaknesses and what's, we might even say, normal for human beings. So it is normal for human beings to have a certain degree of self-respect, and that is in fact good. Self-esteem, to a certain extent, is good. It's when it becomes conceitedness, then that's reprehensible. So having a sense of one's own worth and value, knowing one's skills and abilities, even presenting these to a potential employer, and saying these are my qualifications, this is what I'm capable of doing, and this is what my experience, and so on. All of that is fine. It's when one becomes so puffed up thinking that I'm so special, that I deserve special treatment, and then one becomes angry with the world because the world does not seem to recognize that we have these values, and we demand respect from others. That's when it becomes reprehensible. So having given that word of caution, I think we can now understand the issue in a little better manner, and that we have these feelings, and how do we know when it's not lurking in there somewhere? Well, it's not so much the lurking in there somewhere that is the problem. We can know from from how it manifests in our behavior, our attitude towards others. Do we go around boasting of our own abilities when it's not even like, okay, it's a different thing. You go to an employer and you're trying to assure the employer that you can do the job. Now, if you're in a social situation and you're trying to tell people, well, I'm good at this and good at that, there seems to be no reason for that now. And instead of this, the humble person would rather ask others about their abilities, about their accomplishments, about what they have that's good.
So in understanding, obviously within the social media context where, there's almost an obsession sometimes about getting an X number of likes or retweets, and taking that into account, how can we, if we are feeling like we are becoming boastful at times, how can we, rectify that within ourselves and really be humble?
This is an especially challenging issue to think about, the modern social media, and how that leads to a sort of self-promotion. And whether some aspects of this are good, and to what extent, where does it cross the line getting into something bad? Taking a selfie is a modern phenomenon, right? And
yes.
People do it all of the time. So when does it cross the line and go into something reprehensible? I think things are also relative. When people did not have cell phones and did not take selfies, then it was not an issue, right? If somebody then starts to go out of his way to take self-portraits, that would have now marginalized this person, or set this person apart as someone who is going beyond necessity and beyond the social context to promote himself or herself. But now that we're in the situation where everybody is doing this, then the reprehensible act will be something that goes beyond what is normal in a way. So I hate to put it this way, because then it looks like we're getting into situational ethics, where a thing is right in one context but not right in another. But I think it's also true to a certain extent that the social context shapes us, and that's unavoidable. We cannot escape that. So we need to recognize to what extent we have been shaped by the social context, and not to and be wary that we do not go even beyond what is normal, and we do not fall into things like pride, and we continue to show humility.
I'll definitely be wary now next time I take a selfie.
Well, me too, having had this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.